which is on conceptualizing a streamlined approach to organizing world-class events. This session is being moderated by Mr. Sagar Reddy. Mr. Sagar Reddy is the Director of Active Solution. He has spent time on different roles in the event industry, starting as a volunteer doing part-time jobs and radio jockeying for AIR during college days, as a production manager in an event company executing the events, as a client working for an MNC, as an MC being on stage and entertaining the audience. And with all this experience started Active Solutions, an event technology rental company, with a unique differentiator of services that not many venture into, streaming and taking events online since 2010, specializing in Wi-Fi setups for large events, QR code-based registration and check-in systems, besides sound and light AV. He tries his best in making events eco-friendly and sustainable. Can we have a huge round of applause for Mr. Sagar Reddy? Coming up next, we are honored to have Mr. Felix Remedios, founder and managing director of Reynolds Inc., Reynolds Sound and Lighting Services. Reynolds is a one-stop shop for all kinds of events. The company provides equipment for many international touring acts, including Guns N' Roses, Deep Purple, Black Eyed Peas. He has been honored by EMA twice, the umbrella organizations of the event industry in India, for outstanding services to the Indian event industry, and then again, legendary award in 2021. Can we have a huge round of applause for Ms. Felix? Up next, joining us is Mr. Suresh Madan, who is a mixed media technologist with over 30 years of experience in the audio-visual industry. He has a comprehensive knowledge of AV, lighting, and media control systems. Forever curious about new techniques and technologies, Suresh loves to work with his clients to find practical solutions to help translate their creative vision. He is an avid reader and is passionate about mentoring young people who want to make a career in the event industry. Can we have a round of applause for Mr. Suresh? We also welcome Mr. Roshan Abbas, founder Commune India, director Geometry Encompass. Roshan founded and led Encompass as a managing director into becoming India's largest, most awarded experimental marketing agency. He was an initial investor in and continues to be a mentor partner at The Glitch, now India's leading creative agency, and Chatterbox, India's forerunner in influencer marketing. Can you please have a huge round of applause for Mr. Roshan? And last but not the least, we have Rajesh KV, founder and partner of Cab Experiences, is an event industry veteran with over 25 years of experience in the experimental marketing and communication business. He began his working career at Wizcraft and spent the next 16 years of his life helping build a national footprint for its corporate business. The following 10 years was spent in building successful entrepreneurial ventures with Cab Experiences spanning offices across 4 cities and over 120 members. He's a people's person who believes that a satisfied customer and a partner is the best business strategy of all. He's a spirited, optimistic, a big believer in people and bad puns, almost always neutral, very unlikely to rock the boat, but can rock a suit and snazzy his glasses at all time. Can you please have a huge round of applause? Gentlemen, please take the panel ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before I start, I just want to get a feel of the audience. How many of you here are event managers? So we understand. Anybody here representing the event fraternity? Okay, lovely. So I should comfortably assume the rest of us are all, the rental guys. Yes? Yes? Do I hear a noise? Are we all the rental guys? Yes, okay. Okay, so as all of you know, events is constantly evolving. The way we do events now is not how it used to be a few years back, 10 years back, and it's constantly evolving. So the question here now is, have we evolved enough? Are the rental industry ready for the next league? Are we ready for the next step? So we're here to talk mainly about improving communication, streamlining processes, fortifying technical knowledge from the industry to the event managers, and trying to see, if there's a solution that we can come up between, to bridge the communication back. Because at the end of the day, we all have to cross the bridge together. That's when the event is successful. So with that, I'm going to let each one of you take a few minutes to do your opening statements on what you've thought about the topic, what you want to discuss right now. And then we could go in depth into a few pointers. Then we can take things separately, communication separately, maybe the technical transfer as a separate conversation. So first, a general opening, if anybody would want to start, Mr. Suresh or Mr. Roshan.
Sorry, I have the mic. Just to give a little more context, I think Felix represents ISA, which, as you know, is the association that's bringing in all the technical aspects now which happen at events. And I also represent EMA, which is the Event and Entertainment Management Association, as its president, which is the premier body for event managers largely. But we're hoping to include far more people from the industry in it. For the longest time, there has been a great partnership with certain members in our fraternity. I think these are people who've had long-standing relationships, who value things. I remember in my very first event, the partners who are sitting here are the partners I've been working with since then. And therefore, there is a deep bond that develops because I do believe that and I don't want to sound very, biased in that sense, but I do believe some people actually gave the mandate of respect, technical knowledge, collaboration and partnership to the people they worked with. So we didn't go with these cut-paste copy sheets and put them saying, I require X as requirement. We wanted to stay abreast of what's happening next. What's happened is that over a period of time, this has become, there is no gateway to entering my business. Anybody sitting in this room can go right now, print a thing which says I'm an event manager and come back in and people will believe the person. Because all they will need to do is show 5 pictures which are mostly, could be their event or could be someone else's, nobody will check. They could give 5 references, nobody will check. And ultimately, a lot of it becomes that there was a time when there was a briefcase boutique which was an event manager and then there was an agency. And brands preferred agencies because there was someone they could actually constantly get back to. This business has exploded. Social events, every time I find that just like the number of weddings, the number of wedding planners has increased 100 times. So there are too many people now in the business at one side. I totally support their effort in wanting to do things. But the technical knowledge, or again, this kind of thing hasn't happened. So from a small industry, it has become much larger, but it still unfortunately remains a cottage industry in the manner in which it is treated. Till year before, till we took over in EMA, it wasn't even recognized as an industry. And we have been working with the small and medium scale ministry to actually get that recognition. It's actually happened now. The Information Broadcasting Ministry has finally acknowledged that we are part of the media and entertainment sector. We cannot remain invisible because when we are invisible, we stay below the radar and therefore we do what we want. We still think it's the wild, wild west. And rather than treat this partnership as a partnership, I really feel that people become fair weather friends. It's very, very important that organizations like ISA, EMA come together and try to solve this at an industry level. That's what I would say.
Any one of you, sir? Next.
So I'll take you guys back to 1982 when I started this business as a rental company, renting out small sound systems to little bands that used to perform in clubs and weddings. And there was no such thing as the event industry existing in those days. Over a period of time, as we all know, corporate events started taking place, the event industry grew, there were event managers, and a lot more vendors started coming into the business. And the only sad thing that I feel, unlike abroad where they have proper training institutions to train people in audio, lighting, video, we have very, very minimalistic training institutions in India. We have a few, but it's a long way from what we really need to have. 99% of people, I would say today, have learned on the job. And that includes most of us. We actually, my company, for example, we started with small little systems that we used to take on a cycle rickshaw that we used to hire, grew slowly into a smaller Matador van and stuff like that. And the team grew up in 87, we went into lighting because we were doing a show and we felt the lighting was not that good. So why don't we get into lights? So we got into lights. We bought a few. Pars was the big thing in those days. And with 24 Pars, we were like big lighting guys. So the industry has evolved a lot. And then we slowly went into video because we felt that we're doing sound and lights. Why can't we put projectors and stuff like that? So we went into video and eventually trussing and we grew from there. Now the new players in the market, I mean, they of course invest much more and they come in bang on with everything. So one good thing is today equipment is like almost freely available. I mean, you walk through the Palm Expo and you will see almost every brand under the sun available in India. Those days, we used to carry speaker drivers in our suitcases, bring it in through customs, sweat through, immigration and customs, pay the duty and come away. We struggled. We used to make cabinets. We used to put speaker drivers into cabinets. So the industry has evolved a lot. As I said, unfortunately, the training, educational part has not evolved. And I feel that now with ISAM, IMA, both associations that have kind of worked towards bringing some kind of structure into the same industry, it is time that we all work towards making this industry more structured, more open, more transparent, and work towards jointly doing better events together.
Thank you. So I think this is the story of the 3 S's: success, skill, and scale. In the early days, as Felix was recounting his early days, it was about skill, and that's what customers respected. But as is the nature of entrepreneurship, everyone wants to grow in scale. And so somewhere along the line, the scale became the priority. And by virtue of that, skill slipped to the second slot. And unfortunately, that means when you're trying to achieve scale without skill, success is going to be the one that is going to slip to the third slot. If I can just elaborate on that a bit, we're doing bigger events, much larger events, more complex events. But for all of us who are in that space, we're constantly nursing this sense of almost discontent. You're just sort of skimming through every project. And you're constantly, the conversations that happen between us professionals when we meet is, how are we going to grow this? How is it going to get any better? This, to my mind, is actually the indicator of where things are and what we need to focus on. Felix talked about, where he started from, and I've had a fairly long journey too of nearly 30 years, well, over 30 years. If I was to sort of summarize my thoughts as an old man, I'd say that it's all about really competence today. How many organizations are investing in actually developing competence and then measuring it? People join this business, they get thrown into the trenches, bit like the Vietnam War. If you survive, come back, otherwise it's all right. When they do come back, their survival is the measure of competence. Nobody's asking whether you ducked in the ditch and survived, or did you fight the battle. So from my point of view, I think the pressing need at this point is to develop competencies at all levels, because without that, even scale will get bottlenecked very fast. There'll come a point where we just simply won't be able to do bigger projects because the people required to deliver those projects will not be there, or the skills required to deliver those projects will not be there. And then, like I said earlier, I mean, developing the competence has no meaning unless you measure it and use that both as a reward tool as well as a training tool. So it's not about just measure competence and reward someone. You measure somebody's competence to identify the areas in which they are lacking and help develop that, and that's actually how you develop a much stronger, more productive workforce, and somewhere along this, hopefully you move success to the beginning of the ladder again.
Okay, I think, I'll just pick up from everything that everybody said, but I think I want to specifically make a mention that I don't think any one of us expected what happened to us during the pandemic. I think we've, like Felix said, he's been in business from 1982. I don't think he came up a point where his business shut down because of social distancing. It happened to all of us, and I think our industry suffered the most. We've lost a lot of people. Heart goes out to all of their families. a lot of businesses shut down. And like I said, somewhere we as an agency, the only people we kind of let go was production, which was a very cruel thing to do. But at that point, we couldn't see beyond what was happening from a social distancing aspect. So here, this is what I'm hoping to, at least end with in this session, is times have changed. Things have opened up now, but idea is not to go back and become exactly the same set of vendors, partners, agencies that we were, and saying, can we all take that time out to re-strategize, relook at how we want to operate, and actually future-proof ourselves so that we don't go through this again. And it'll take a lot. I guess the time is right for us to go back to the drawing board as a collective, and focus on a world which is not, I guess the world is all going to be about culture. What culture are we going to follow as professionals? 2 is collaboration. There is no way we're going to survive as solo entities. It has to be collaboration with that compassion to want to collaborate. And finally, I think Roshan has proved this, content is the way forward in many ways. Yeah, so maybe we'll touch upon all of these subjects in some form. But hats off to all of you to actually survive this, be here, look at a positive future. And I'm sure together we can do better things.
Right. So ideally, we're summing it up saying change is the only constant and we have to keep evolving as and when the need comes for it. Let's dig deep into improving communication. So that's a big factor that's always spoken about where, a lot of people just land up at the venue, nobody has a clue what happens, and then somehow things fall into place. But is that the right way to do things? I mean, how differently should we do it?
No, you see, this is where the classical problem of event lies, that all of us seem to be looking at just one individual. What we said as a joke backstage, that, the presentation and the dimensions and the drawings are shown to the client. 90% of the time, they're not shown to the person who's the partner from the technical end to tell you whether it's right or wrong. I thought that was such a brilliant comment that you guys were discussing. So communication at multiple levels. I worked with everyone who's sitting here from a technical partner's perspective. And, there was a time, I remember when we were working on the IPL, and Suresh was very clear that without X number of projectors, you cannot get the image you're looking at. Now, suddenly the client has told you, no, we only have X as a budget. So the first thing you decide to do is you take your own call. You decide, suddenly you become a technical expert and say, no, you don't require 22 projectors, you can do with 16. And lo and behold, suddenly success, as he rightly said, gets completely gone because you wanted to do scale. I mean, I think that was brilliant what he just said about scale, success, and skill. I think, Suresh, I'm making you a mentor from today because it's really, I think it's such a wonderful mantra for us to take back. But communication between teams, and very often the other problem that our industry has is that people get, after 2 years, people expect a raise and a change of designation. We are very happy to give it to them, but does anyone do competency mapping? Do you ever, in your team, sit with people and say, do you deserve this new designation? Have you learned enough? At WPP, there is a certain number of learning hours you need to do every year. And we need to, so while there's certain training which we all need to do internally, which is on ethics and trust, etc. and whatever. But there's a certain number of hours you need to put in. And those are people who are tracked within the WPP system as fast movers. And they are the ones who are rewarded. So, this thing has to change because whoever was your production assistant becomes general manager by hopping the ladder and going across 5 companies in 2 years and is general manager. Now you suddenly expect, we react to designation. This person knows everything. They know nothing. Similar to the client servicing person who might also equally know nothing. And the client definitely doesn't know. But everyone here has an opinion, apart from the person who should have the opinion, which is the technical partner. So I think communication is a huge loop. And again, I'm just going to bring in Ima from a perspective that we are trying to institutionalize education in health, safety, technical, show running. It's an ambitious project, but we are hoping to certify at least 5,000 professionals by the end of this year. And what we are proposing, and it's a big proposal, is to say that anybody who's hiring and anybody who is hiring the services of a company should look at this rating system. It's like the CAT exam of our industry, which, I'm sure there is such training that exists. But somehow I don't know why we don't really spend time doing it. We're so busy digging the next hole to make money and in our business, you dig a hole, you drink the water, you dig a hole, you drink the water. But I mean, some of us would believe that agency relationships build long-term relationships with brands and clients. So I really feel communication and education are two very key areas.
It also sounded to me that you spoke a little about the knowledge part of transfer, okay? We still haven't finished with communication. I'll come back to the communication bit. We here talking communication more in terms of, situation that happened at the venue, the setup, the layout plans, is things addressed enough for staff? Is there food, their hygiene, their breaks, the setup times, the amount of time given for dismantling. So those are more of communication that we're talking about. Suresh or Felix, if you want to dwell deeper into what we are expecting in terms of communication.
Okay, let me start with the communication part. I think one of the biggest issues that most of us have as technical vendors for events is that we often get a list that comes from a production guy. He says, I want 4 tops, 2 subs, 12 lights, this, that. But he doesn't talk about the event. He doesn't say it's a conference which is winding up with a performance. He's given us a list, performance, I want 12 mics. He's forgotten that you need monitors. But if he had to give us a breakdown of the event, what it was all about, the size of the hall, the number of people going to be there, the event flow, and all the drawings that his marketing team has given to the end client, I mean, that would really make a big difference for us. And then we could come back with some proper relevant questions on things. I'd also like to bring into perspective things that, how, and this has been voiced by many of us, we often don't get time to set up. People plan massive events and then say we're getting the hall at midnight and we're going to run, rehearsals at 7 in the morning and we're going to start at 10. Now, how do you do that? I mean, everything has a physical aspect to it, the actual physical moving in of equipment, setting it up, doing tech checks, making sure that everything works before we do the tech check with the event company. So, similarly, last week I got an event in Hyderabad where the guy says, massive event, but you got to pack up in 2 hours. Impossible. I mean, it's going to take me the whole of, maybe the next 7 to 8 hours to pack up this kind of gear. You're giving me 1 day to set up, but you're giving me 2 hours to pack up. I mean, what makes sense? So I think, a little bit of proper communication from the production side of the event company telling us exactly everything from setup to pack up to, what the event is all about, the venue, the breakout venues. I mean, that will have a lot of, information for us and we can go back with questions and get more information. So my main thing is that if we all have information that we share transparently across the board, that's going to make everybody's work plan easier because then we can talk to each other and try and find a solution.
Just to add to this, in the past, when we look back, all the projects where we've actually involved partners, to be a part of the meeting, in the project planning, we've managed to successfully deliver them. And so what happens there is we don't have these issues about communication when you actually get them to be a part of the team. So I know Avishka is sitting here, we've done some crazy work, but it all starts with that, coming to the table, knowing exactly what you need to work on, and what happens with this entire team, and they all get to see perspectives, right? So I think what's been happening is, I think communication is also connected with transparency. Because there's no transparency as an agency to vendor to, we're all, because, what we do with our client is pretty much with us. We don't want to share it, but every time we've actually come out and had a very honest, conversation with our partners saying, listen, this is where we stand, this is what we have, this is what we need to do. 9 out of 10, everybody's actually come back, supported and made it happen. But at that point, if, their inclusion, value, they actually fill the gap of our production teams, and unfortunately, like I said, I'm not taking anything away from the production teams, most of them, they've refused to, they haven't upgraded their skills in the technical know of these products, right? I don't want to, I always, some of these guys become coordinators. They actually work with relationship to bring technical people in, but may not be competent. So I think competency comes back to the same thing in many ways. So yes, we encourage conversation with partners. You know, I think that confluence, if we can actually bring that together and make it a norm, make it a practice, there's no reason we will go wrong in the planning. You know, another issue that we constantly face is the classic, you know, because by default we have to work with a sound vendor or a light and video vendor, and then you have generators in between all of this. So typically there is no synergy between anybody, right? And there's a fault finding that keeps happening as a practice. You know, everybody's, so somewhere, how do we break these barriers? How do we break these barriers as a collective, saying, you know, who's the right choice of generator? How much do we really need? We are a collective, fine. At what point do we decide we're not competing, we're partnering? You know, what is the cutoff?
I just want to actually suddenly shift the focus because, you know, the screen's right in front of me and what I'm seeing there is saying an approach to organizing world-class events, right? I mean, and we don't want to end up becoming only discussing our personal pain points and, you know, what technicals doesn't do with companies and companies don't do with technicals, because yes, that's true. But, you know, I've just spent a lot of time at the expo, and before this I was seeing a lovely presentation on the building of the Firdaus, you know, that entire chamber that was done. You've got to understand that in these kind of places, when my client travels abroad, they become a different person. When they're in India, they become a different person. If I give them a design that is absolutely simple because it can be done in that amount of time, they will accept it there. You give them the same design here, it's not accepted. Because somewhere, and again, I'm stealing your line, which you said back, but I'm giving him full credit. You know, Rajesh Tandon said we should ban this word jugaad. Because, you know, this belief that jugaad is a good thing. Jugaad is a last resort. You know, when you are drowning and suddenly you found a way to survive, that is good jugaad. But if life becomes jugaad, that's not how world-class events run. Sabas was with us in Bangalore, if you remember. And when we were having that conversation, he was talking about the Commonwealth Games. And they said that Stewfish had created that central lighting panel, which was supposed to be inflated and go up. And the best thing that he said was, he said, you know, I was standing next to the Prime Minister and he turned and asked me saying, this will go up, no? I mean, this is the Prime Minister asking a person. So can you imagine that, what is the amount? And, you know, while at the expo, they were dealing with challenges every day, every time. But, you know, I saw a musical being put up where there was 100 days of rehearsal. Where, you know, I'm working a lot on musical theater now, and I genuinely find, you know, we just work together on something. Again, here we expect to move into a hall 5 days before, and suddenly we solve everything. And suddenly we're like, this doesn't work, that. That's not how it is meant to be done. So if you want to deliver world-class events, world-class experiences, I often tell people that the amount of time you spend in coming up with the idea, do you spend in implementing it? And unfortunately, this making the presentation in the car before you go to the client has become making the show. And everyone sort of claps themselves on the back at the end saying they become a big hero. But it's not in the interest of our industry. You know, one disaster at an event costs the industry. Doesn't just cost that one person. Suddenly you turn and say, let's not attempt this. Right? But I think that these are all issues that we need to start solving. And I just think that Rajesh's line should become our mantra.
If I can just pick up on something that Rajesh said about, you know, bringing in partners for discussions, and whenever, you know, like in his organization, he's done that, the results have been, job has been smooth, the results have been as expected and all of that. But here's the flip side to this coin. And I think this is where maybe there is a learning to take away. This sort of early interaction with the supply chain, vendors, partners, whatever word you want to use, people who are going to deliver the project, typically happens on the bigger, challenging projects. And by virtue of the fact that they're the challenging, bigger projects, the agency has almost right at the very beginning made up their minds who they're going to work with. And so it's very easy to bring those people on board early enough, even before perhaps commercial discussions have started, right? And share designs, thoughts, drawings, et cetera, et cetera. But the moment you move away from the sphere of those big projects, there is this we'll see who we are going to work with. And because we don't know who we are going to work with, we are having this continuous engagement with the customer, presenting drawings, selling ideas, showing videos, references, etc., closing the sale, closing the price. Now that we know what is the price, now we have to figure out a supply chain. But you already set the customer expectation. And now you're expecting your supply chain to be the miracle drive person, right? And the learning here is that while you can't just sort of wish away the reality of it, what you can do is bring in, even within that, bring in a work process that, okay, we have potentially these guys we're going to work with right at the beginning. Maybe even your client hasn't yet closed the commercials with you, but, well, you're doing the job more or less, right? Bring those guys in. Separately, you can start engaging, believe that they're in their integrity, and identify people with integrity, because that's actually one of the most important assets and sometimes the most missing asset in our industry. Identify people with professional integrity, make them part of your ecosystem so that you can very comfortably share with them things early enough and avoid that problem of having promised something to deliver, which the person who's going to deliver is saying, what were you drinking, right? The other side of the, and again, picking up that from what Rajesh said, Jugaad, there's a very interesting book called Jugaad, and it says intuitive engineering. Jugaad is intuitive engineering. Inherent in that word is the word engineering. There is still some degree of engineering. It's application of knowledge and process intuitively when the regular defined process won't work. And I think it would be wrong to say that we should dismiss it. It's a very valuable tool when applied correctly and selectively. When applied as a rule, it's a recipe for disaster. So the thing that we have to, I would take away, and I would say is my learning, is that have the ability to do that intuitive engineering or jugaad, but don't make that your workflow. Don't make that your process. Then you're living on hope, and hope is never a plan.
Right. We'll next spend the next 10 minutes again a little bit on the technical knowledge. So here we're talking about, see, when you do events, when it's technology, it's usually a bottoms-up approach. So first, one of you guys figure out something new that you want to do, you've learned it, you spent your time on it. Now, how is this actually going to the designer or the guy who's conceptualizing it? How is he understanding it? So is there a wide gap between how much the vendor knows and what his equipment is capable of doing or what his technology is capable of doing to the understanding of the event producer? There is a big gap in that.
No, there is a big gap. I tell you culturally, the mistake as an agency, when I look back now, we vest a lot of powers in the hand of a production manager, right? So largely what happens is knowledge is limited to what he understands or doesn't understand. So maybe we as an industry, what we need to do is educate every single person, give them access to information. Because what happens is even servicing folks who meet the client, rarely have information to technology. They're dependent on somebody knowing what is there, and somebody looks at an idea. So I guess at our end, we need to really train every single resource that we have, not limited only the production managers who will eventually put a production together, right? So that knowledge needs to be worked on. So we understand what's available. And like I said, and what also happens is we do very little of learning. Because, everybody's running pillar to post to, service clients and cater to them. The joke is this, right? We pull off projects for clients overnight, but we rarely get time to, fix our own websites. Right, our own collaterals, right? We really don't care because we don't get paid for that. But we're ready to do everything else for our clients. So I think this habit of, working methodologies where on a regular basis there's exposure, and currently, like I said, thanks to pandemic, we've all are used to a virtual world. We don't really need to go to physical spaces to learn, so it's a practice just to open out what's there, periodically, and open it to everybody. I mean, anybody and everybody wants to come. Clients want to be a part of it. Maybe a forum. Roshan, you could be the best guy to set this up as a, just come and learn what's there, just to understand who's got what. So, yeah, maybe we'll have to change. Like I said, one of the things we need to do is change the way how we approach things, right? And not limit it to a few people that we know.
Right. So a similar question to all of you. How many clients have actually come to your warehouse and seen your equipment? Have they seen what the scale of equipment that you have? How many of them? Sir, do you have any experience of people coming to your warehouse, checking, your scale, the latest whatever you've gotten?
Only my foreign clients. I have so many clients in Bangalore, forget about other cities. They've never come to my warehouse even once. They don't know what I have, they don't care what I have. Okay. And the problem is, I think that this is my personal feeling, that every single event management company management should make sure that they take the care and time and effort to make sure that they also know the vendor companies, the vendor partners that they are working with. Because you are dependent on only one guy, the production guy, okay? If the production guy tells you that he's got gold, you believe he's got gold because he himself has not seen the warehouse. And you know about so many production guys, what they're all about. I don't want to talk about it in a public forum. But the fact is that, the sad thing is that, as Rajesh said, we spend so much of time on selling clients, beautiful, 3D views and this and that. But we don't take time and care to make sure whom are we working with, what they are capable of. And I think that's a very important part of even within your company, of making sure that you have a certain standard of people that you partner with. If you say they are a partner, you should know what is their level, what they can do, what is their capability in terms of service support for the equipment that they own. This is very, very important. And that is why I think this conversation is really great, because now we are coming out with ideas. I think COVID is a great reset for all of us. We learn, we've made mistakes. Let's work to, event phase 2 in India, and let's see how we can do it better. That's what I feel.
So you know what, I think, again, maybe Roshan, you'd be a better judge at this. We constantly, this thing of quality, right? What is our motivation? I'm talking at the agency front. How many of us are motivated about, is our goal delivering quality events or making more money? And that is where the problem starts. How many of us actually, cater to quality as an expression, saying, and like I said, there is no way we can deliver quality in any project if we do not have quality partners, right? So there's no debate there. And the reason a certain partner has grown in stature is because of what they do as investments, how much they understand, learn, and contribute. And that understanding. So what happens is when it's constantly, if it's about money, saying, okay, or profitability, then all the shortcuts. Who can do this? Where's the stopgap? All the concept of quality. So I guess what's our motivation? And I think even at our end, we are really trying our best to change the culture at our client's end. The problem starts there, because they've defined what your rate is. Whether Felix has got 30 odd years of experience in what he does, or somebody who's come with a 3 years experience, the rate is defined, which is not a fair play. So I guess we have a lot of work at our end to just educate our clients to change the system so that they identify what quality means, and we can bring that to the table. So
right. So like how we were discussing previously, we've always been looked at as a product provider. I mean, we should change our mentality and we should change our position to being a service provider. And you had a different way of how you address this in your quotes.
So before I talk about that, just a bit about clients visiting warehouses. Since I moved into my new premises about 3-4 years ago, I've had many clients visit my premises because I started offering good percolated coffee. But most of them never made it beyond the office to the warehouse. They were happy to have conversation, have coffee, and leave. So it still illustrates the point that you can take the camel to the well, but you can't make him, drink the water unless he wants to. But on a serious note, I think this is something that's such an understated and poorly understood point. If, by misfortune, one of us has a sickness or an ailment, I mean, the first thing we're going to do is Google our way out, talk to 5 friends, and figure out the best person to give us that medical care. Yeah, we look at airlines and we think, okay, do we want to fly this airline or another one because, we have perceptions of what is safer, et cetera, et cetera. But for something that we bet our lives to be so critical on, the success of that 2 hours of an event, what is the amount of attention we are giving to actually figuring out who we are working with? I mean, that's like saying, I'm going to get open heart surgery and you know what? I don't really care who the surgeon is. I'm just going to go lie down, close my eyes and hope it works. Right. So if on the one, it's like crazy. On the one side, every customer treats their event, and they rightly should, as if it's the most important thing in the world on that day. And yet, not even a fraction of the attention that you would give to any equivalent thing in your personal life. So how does that work? The other thing, Rajesh, you said quality and profitability. I would slightly beg to disagree. You can indeed have quality and profitability as long as you're willing to be practical about what is profitability. Eventually, I mean, if all you're chasing is numbers, yeah, then they can't work. But if you're willing to be practical about how much you can make, you can indeed deliver quality also. And then talking of quality, I mean, what does this quality look like? It's a bird with 4 feathers. What is it? Who knows what quality looks like, right? Eventually, it's some word that we use so loosely. Unless the person wanting that quality knows how to find or look for that quality, what does it look like? Is it blue? Is it black? Is it a well-wrapped piece of cloth on a frame? Is it a screen without dead pixels? Is it sound that people on the stage can hear? What is quality? So unless you define what that is, you have no way of measuring it. And so, in the absence of that, the measure of quality becomes, my client was happy. And back to the same problem, you are putting the onus of judging on someone who himself doesn't know how to judge. And that's percolating all the way down. So on the upward side, you're doing it with the client. On the downward side, you're doing it with the production guy, who on his downward side is doing it with the supply chain. So everyone is talking about quality, but nobody has a clue what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, this whole idea, so again, I'll try to give you all some solutions that we're working on. So recently we launched an app called eMagic. So EMA being the industry body, we launched eMagic, which is an app which is there for people to be able to review each other. And there was a big debate on turning and saying, no, it should only be one way. And I was absolutely opposed to it, saying, no, if you are reviewing, you've got to have a two-way review system. Because a one-way review system is, oh my God, I can't say anything bad because that person will give me a bad review. But it has to be a two-way system. And this thing which Rajesh also said about the fact of transparency. Transparency comes like this. Today when you hire someone, you go onto a website and look up Glassdoor, and on Glassdoor you can see the reviews people have placed on a company. And there are times when I go there and I check them, and yes, I will have 80% good reviews, but I will have 20%, I mean, hopefully less, 10% or whatever as bad reviews. But you've got to look at those and take that feedback. No one wants to take feedback. We had started in the early days of Encompass feedback form, and 50% of the clients used to fill it. 50% say, "Arey yaar, you'd given us one more job to do. Everything was good. Tum hi bhar do." Now, tum hi bhar do to koi fayda nahi hai. But there were brands that actually took cognizance. There were brands that actually wrote back detailed feedback, and we almost started building this. The idea of building an event manual, the idea of sending people a feedback form. And I must tell you that while we started all this, over a period of time, as culture changes, it sort of disappeared. Because somebody said, no, we don't get response, it takes more time. And we'd placed it as in our client servicing person, this was something they had to do. They would be at the end of the year judged. But unfortunately, just as what Suresh said, people are judged by, how was the client happy? Event was good. Nobody will see how many times was there a glitch. Nobody will see how many times the sound actually had a problem. And frankly, one person's job was just that. When I worked on Aladdin here and I was acting, I wasn't even, I was there. But frankly, I was acting because I wanted to learn. And there was a show caller, right? And nowadays, many of our bigger shows have got a show caller. Earlier, it was the client servicing person who was the show caller, who would stand behind and turn and say, now so-and-so's about to speak, play some music, do something, right? Now it's become a job. Now, apart from a show caller, Disney has a sheet which has got the top 50 moments in the musical, which will say song number 1, dialogue so-and-so, this thing, opening of the trap door, coming out of the genie, light, the magic carpet. And each day there is one person whose only job is that the creative director is sitting there and turning and saying, make this note, make this note, make this note. And when the show gets over, everyone sits together and for 1 hour you can't leave. Everybody sits and goes through that process, which is why you have quality of that level. But here, I'm sure 90% of the time, these people will be running in the next evening because they've got to go to the next setup. Who has the time? They got to catch up on their sleep on the way, in the vehicle. You're doing the same thing. Client is the only person who's gone home and had a good night's sleep. Or perhaps the performing artist, but everyone else doesn't. So I think there is a need for a change in environment. I must tell you that having now reached that mark of 50 in our lives, many of us are looking back, and I've been seeing a lot of young people actually getting physical, the amount of illness, the amount of people suffering heart issues in our business, it's ridiculous. But where does it come from? It comes from the stress that we accumulate on a day-to-day basis, right? And we have to look on this holistically because, frankly, it is so many problems to solve. It's like it's a Pandora's box which we've opened. But I'm glad we've opened it. Otherwise, everybody just puts a lid on it and moves on.
So having said that, it almost sounded like we have some solutions coming in. So the next part of our discussion is, what can we do from now on as a concrete solution, templatize the whole discussion saying, this should be the process, this should be the procedure that should go forward for the scale like this or for a timeline like this. So is there a possibility that together as IMA, ISA, a templatized version of communication, transfer of technical knowledge, streamlining the process, your thoughts?
Sorry, just to, before you move on to the next sort of point, and you started by asking me, what is it that I had talked about? We talked about this earlier, and I think I should say this. Maybe an act of lunacy, but in all my work life, I have never furnished a client with a cost breakup. And the reason I have not done that, I always say to my clients, you have full right to have 100% transparency on what I am providing you. I will give you a list of everything that will come to your show site, down to perhaps the last cable if you like. You're welcome to have it. But I'm not going to monetize every single item into a rate structure. And the reason for that is that the moment you do that, you inevitably make your offering a commodity because commodities have fixed prices. And what we really do is actually provide a service. We were talking backstage and I said, look, from our side of the industry, as technical service providers, what is the nearest industry with the same business model? And in my mind, it's the aviation industry. We buy very expensive equipment, then we put very expensive people, skilled people on top of it, then we wait for someone to come buy seats, and when we finally do something, there is zero tolerance for failure because 300 people are going to die. So we are in performance in every other way, closest to the aviation business. That being said, how can you then commoditize it? All of us buy tickets, and on every given day, within the same day, within a few hours, we accept price differential. The moment you start commoditizing your offering, you cannot actually make it a service. No service is ever commoditized. And I think that is the key thing in some ways to present this to our customers and say, look, we're not providing you a piece of equipment. Hey, you want that screen? There, have it. Can I go have a coffee? No. You want me to operate that screen, or you want me to operate it well. You want me to make sure that it changes at the right time and shows me the right thing. That's a service, right? Other than choosing whether you want to travel in a Desire or in a more expensive car, what are you really looking for from the driver the Uber you hire? Cab will be clean, the guy will be hygienic, won't be smelling, right? That's the service side of it. So what you're demanding is service, but what you're wanting to pay for is for a commodity. It doesn't work. And that's what I would request our clients to appreciate, that not everything need to be distilled into a rate. If at all you must distill it into a rate, then at least separate out the service or the human side of it from the product side of it. Even there, it's virtually impossible to actually distill it into a rate because there is so much variation in product that to distill it into a rate, you end up again commoditizing it. A screen is a screen is a screen. You can buy an LED screen for $2,000 a square meter, and you can buy an LED screen for exactly the same P3.9 for $6,000 a square meter. How are you ever going to know which one you got?
So this format of what you've been using is good for your profitability, is good for your quality, and you are able to give quality with this style of working.
I would like to believe I give quality. I'd like to believe I'm reasonably profitable, but certainly I'm far professionally satisfied.
Right. Your comments?
No, I
on
just
that,
want
sir?
to add to, like I said, I mentioned earlier, the problem lies with the way this industry actually evolved. And I think we were discussing backstage. We followed an advertising model of the fee structure. And I think the problem starts there. What's happened is what used to be a 17.5% at one point, exactly what an agency charged, we followed with not really understanding what we offer as value. And that became 10%, 12%, now everybody negotiates. Now, because we are sitting with profits that we make of all our partners, because finally bottom line happens from somewhere, we've actually compromised on our true value as an industry, where, like Roshan said, when you go to, let's say we go to work in an international market, we work with, every resource is charged for. Their time is charged for, the value is charged for, and everybody pays. In India, like I said, our creative, which is the craziest thing, right? Our creative, which is our true asset, which is what we actually transact or sell, has no value. Clients in India do not actually put money behind a creative idea because they think that's their right to get it free of cost. But, so then what's next? Then the number of people we deploy on a project, whether it's planning, creative resource, space to work for, everything is actually a cost. We've never tabulated the cost. We've never actually evaluated the cost. So eventually what happens is we still continued. A commercial team decides we will work at 6%. We think, okay, 6%, chalo business, but 25 can come from somewhere else. But that's a wrong system. So I think we've increased it. Maybe it's time for us to actually revisit it, start looking for value for our own services. The minute we start doing that, we'll start actually valuing everything else that partners actually bring to the table. And I'm with you, Suresh. Like I said, when we look at quality partners, you're right, it's not that we need the breakup, because we know end result is you'll deliver the job. And finally it is, itne mein hai, we have so much, let's do it. It happens, right? That's a relationship. But I guess if we culturally don't change it, and I think, Roshan, I think a lot to do with us to say, how do we make this, we're constantly struggling to be recognized in this industry. Like this industry has been, active for 25, 30 years. We've been, the people who pioneered it. We are very integral to our marketing service today, but we continue to be vendors. A client evaluates our work. It's not an apple to apple comparison. There are two ideas. How do you evaluate two ideas on the same parameter? So there are two great ideas. Both are completely different. Maybe operating at two different scales. A client expects a L1 model to work on. It just doesn't work. It's actually a wrong culture. And the problem is none of us, we haven't been able to stand up to it, make this change. And a change would cost us work, business. But are we ready to do it as an industry? Till we don't, I don't know how far we can change this.
No, I think just to add, because we're looking at solutions going forward, I think there are multiple solutions we need to look at. Educating both sides of the supply chain, which is whether it is our partners educating us and us educating brands. Brands do not want the brass tack education. Brands want this will win you an award education. This will get you your next promotion education. I was in a conversation yesterday where the brand manager clearly told me, saying, listen, I showed him something and he said, this will be award-winning work. That was it. That was the end total. I had to sell him that. So I think we need to raise the standards at that level. Similarly, with our teams, we need to explain to them, see, ultimately human beings are looking at benefit. If you tell a person saying by spending 2 hours learning with ESA as a module on technical training, you will make your life so much easier and save 100 hours, the person may see some sense, one. Second, I think there is a need for transparency, which can be done by review mechanisms for sure, which is why this eMagic app was put out there. The whole fact of us putting out, the pandemic taught us that you can put down most essential things onto a screen, So therefore, education is something I'm genuinely pushing, and I've given the team an ambitious target of saying train 5,000 people. Don't know whether it'll happen within a year or whatever, but if it does, it's there. Making this industry recognized as an industry body, we've got these roles to put standards, to put these kind of mechanisms, which we're working with the government. And I must tell you that there are many things that our government does that we don't recognize. So the Skill Development Council has actually got a mandate. If you train X number of people in event management and then employ them, the government gives you a subsidy on those people. And nobody knows this. Nobody knows this. 5 people know it and are using it. Because in our business, it's a new way of not helping people but making money. And I find it ridiculous because, like if tomorrow somebody finds a solution, they believe, let me hold this solution because nobody else should know it. And I've always had a reverse belief because, and maybe it's teachers being my parents and therefore it sort of passes on, but I really believe it's a critical thing. These kind of things should not happen once a year. I really am proposing, and we've had this conversation because, Felix has reached out and the association reached out. I think we once a quarter, if that's ambitious, then maybe once a year, need to have a closed door, just everyone who's a partner, everyone who's together, and it shouldn't become the 2 events that IMA does, because one is an awards focused event and a knowledge sharing event. But how do you make people understand that technical knowledge of use is going to be a very important aspect as well? Culture internally needs to be changed by agency leaders, and externally, IMA will do its best to help in any way possible. So frankly, I've been taking notes in between. I haven't been checking messages. I've been busy taking notes because I like doing that to make sure that I've got a takeaway to tell the team saying, let's go and do the following. And I'm totally committed to doing this on behalf of IMA for sure.
So I've been having a lot of thoughts also while this whole conversation has been going on, and many good takeaways. I think, amongst us as vendors in our own companies, how do we grade our people? How do we, train them up? How do we incentivize them to do better and perform better? How do we get the feedback from our clients? How the event went. I know at one point of time my company used to do it, and along the way, because of less response, of course then COVID hit or whatever, this has kind of disappeared. And I'd like to bring it back again because I was reminded about it. And I think if we amongst us can sit together, ISA members, and make jointly points how we can all help to improve our own companies within us. The people, get training done, award them for, good work that they've done in terms of promotions, and, make sure that we kind of structurally improve our businesses to deliver better events. I think from our side, this is a very important thing. Coming to the joint collaboration with IMA, and thank God we've got an ISA now. We've got IMA there to guide us. They've been there for so many years. We would really like to sit together with you all, form a continuous program, a kind of joint team together to let's talk frankly about issues between us, how we can do better. One of the key things after COVID, we lost a lot of manpower. We lost a lot of technicians. Some migrated to other industries because they felt this wasn't worth it for them. The stress factor is another issue. Some moved on to better paying areas like Dubai for Dubai 2020. But we really need to bring back this business and bring it to the level, if not that level, much, much better than before. And we need to do it jointly. So we need support from IMA because they need to recognize that good technicians help them do better events. And at the end of the day, they have to be recognized in the form of, we can charge for these technicians and explain to IMA, listen, I want to give you a better event, so I'm giving you technicians that are trained, so please pay for this. And these are conversations that we can have jointly, and I'm sure that we can all work together to do better events together if we have very good communication, especially about all these pain points that we are talking about. I think that's the way forward as far as, I see it.
So to make it very simple for all of us to understand, if we improve the dignity of labor for our staff, we are in a way overall, lifting the whole industry up. Because they are like the bottom. They are still there. And I feel very bad that, it's what we actually pay them is not an easy living for them. That's how difficult it is. So that needs to change. And that's when their way of thinking would change, and that's when everything will fall into place. So maybe you think price correction is the need of the hour to help get the quality up, to get things up. Otherwise, it's only, competing against each other and bringing prices down. It's like, it's like a rat race. Is that?
So, there's, I don't know whether this solution to be considered, but if our technical partners, I'm talking on behalf of ISA now, there are two things, right? Problem is at two levels. One, the resource pool. Where is your talent? Constantly people with more money is hiring a talent. So poaching is a big issue. Or like I said, conditions like Dubai paying more, a lot of technicians went out. It actually hit the industry. If you ask us today, we're actually struggling to, everybody's looking for people to say, how do we deliver? Our best partners are also struggling because of resource. It's understandable. One is that, ISA certified new crew, so you keep growing talent at a level that you have a pool. Two, can all the partners come together and saying, we will share technical resource. Let's collectively work with the technical resource and actually plug our gap. Not everybody's busy at the same time, right? Is there a way to bring ideas like this where you say, fine, they've got a price. The only way we can lift this is when there are opportunities for everybody to pay. And at times it just becomes too much for one individual, partner who wants to deliver that. So maybe a collective thing saying, here's a collective pool of people. Like we would be absolutely happy to outsource a production manager's role to an ISA governed or certified resource pool. We just bring them on board as projects, as freelancers, and they come certified. They have the backing of everybody. Say, okay, trust this guy. There could be parameters that we set out. Try new things like these. Because we don't really need to, have a production manager on board. If ISA comes forward and says, here's a pool of people that we brought to the table, work with them, quality can improve, we can change the way we operate. So maybe the time is right for us to restructure how we do, how do we look at business.
I just wanted to tell you a little bit of what we did in Karnataka, because after COVID, it was a really bad time for us. We have our ISA Karnataka group, and one good thing that happens very often is there is almost every day a message going in the group, I need help, can you help me with this? Or I've got an event, I can't handle it, can someone handle it? And we are seeing this collaboration happening, and we shared it yesterday amongst our other ISA members from other zones, saying that, this is a great thing to take forward, because someone sitting with inventory in his warehouse, he now has the opportunity to earn some money. So I think collaboration is also about being secure. A lot of us feel insecure and they don't want to share a potential business with somebody else, saying, he's going to make money, I'm not going to make. And that thing has to go away, because I think if once we're secure about ourselves and we're open to sharing, a lot more people start sharing, and then things start looking better for everybody. And it has saved me a couple of times also. So personally, I think if we are all more open and more transparent, things will really work well for everybody.
We've seen, I think we've actually seen a difference where we are now working with a lot of freelance resource. It's, like you said, a showrunner today is a valuable asset. And the good thing is, he'll be running a show for Encompass or Wishcraft or anybody. Actually, none of us, it doesn't bother us. We just look at him as an experienced resource who comes and does his job brilliantly well. So I'm saying, when we are open to sharing, I think all of us just need to. It can actually extend to a lot of services that we possibly have. We don't have to have it in source. Yes, you want to hold on to, I'm saying from agency side, a creative and servicing, hold on to it. But a lot of things could be actually shared. A production manager could be shared. A production talent could be shared. So imagine a bunch of our agencies coming together and saying, we have a common production pool, right? We can dig into the pool and work. It could actually help. And, that could be a better way of... So maybe we should also, open our minds to these things and get there.
There's an interesting example of that in the telecom business. So at one point, Airtel, Vodafone, and Idea found that they were all investing money in putting up towers, putting antennas up, and then one guy's folks would go cut the cables for the other and back, vice versa. And they all realized that they were just like, chasing the tails. So together, these three competitors set up a company which exists today called Indus Towers. And that business was only going to set up towers. The same one-time tower is going to have antennas for all of them. And now nobody's interested in cutting anybody's cables, like the old CCTV wards, right? And it's an independent, profitable business. Having said that, is it something that can be executed in our businesses at the technician level? That's almost like saying common air pilot pool that any airline can have. Maybe not. I would be skeptical, to be honest. But what I would slightly take away, a slightly different thing out of that, what you touched upon about how you're perfectly fine with the show caller running your show and Encompass show or Vista show on different days. I would imagine that that comfort comes from those specific few companies or people who become show callers and their sense of professional integrity. And which brings me back to the point I made earlier that as agencies, this is the whole survival of the fittest game, right? Capitalism is a great corrective mechanism in itself. That if the big agencies or the big spenders, let's just call them big spenders, decide that they will patronize those partners whose professional integrity is as important as their professional delivery, it automatically becomes a self-correcting mechanism. Either the other guys have to get their act together, perform better, be more professional in their approach, which corrects a lot of the other problems that exist in the industry. The whole, power vested in the hands of one man sort of a problem. Something that Felix sort of touched upon and didn't want to elaborate in this circle. But many of those problems actually get corrected by virtue of having an ecosystem that you develop. But what it does mean, unfortunately, in the short term, is that it will eat into your profitability because those resources inevitably will not come cheap. I mean, it's like an expensive airline versus a budget airline, right? You pay that little premium for things that you value. But eventually, this is a self-correcting mechanism. So I think, again, it takes a little bit of forward thinking to say, okay, we'll live with a little bit less margin for the fact that we're going to be doing this for the next 20 years. And hey, next 2 or 3 years, we'll live with, 3% drop in our margin. But we'll develop an ecosystem that allows us to be very confident that we can up the game for ourselves. And in your business, it's your competitive advantage too. So it's again the whole survival of the fittest game. Because customers today are, of course, looking at price, but they are also looking for that next big idea and the next big delivery. So that's as critical, isn't it?
Great,
this is just my suggestion to be willing to make that investment.
Right, we have about 5 minutes. I want to see if there's any questions from the audience. We're more than happy to hear it.
Just for the record, I'd like to state I represent a company called Natura, you all know it. But I'd also like to represent the ESA West Zone. That's something that I also represent here. And something that I'd sort of like to take away from this, and this is, I think, quite easily implementable, is, and like Rajesh mentioned earlier on, that every time that you probably have done a big event, it's with involving all the partners in. And I remember the crazy one that we did with Shraddha Kapoor and Lakme. Now, the reason why I think that also happened, and those kind of events have happened more often, even with Roshan's team, when we did the first Google building launch, was because I had insisted on doing a workshop for your teams in your offices. And now it's a simple thing, right? It was just a matter of you guys making sure that your teams are available on the day that I came and I did a 2-3 hour long workshop. Why can't the same thing not be done in other forums? So for example, an ESA powered workshop for various event agency offices, rather than how many people have come to our warehouses. We come to you guys. And these are essentially knowledge sessions. That's what they are. And I think they need to be backed up with more such forums like Palm. For example, Palm is exactly that. It could be exactly that. Emacs or Imagine could also involve something like that. Is what I would like to mention as a simple takeaway that we could implement very easily. It's just a matter of saying that these are organized within us, between ESA and EMA, and whichever way you'd like to sort of structure it. But us, or rather, let's say the vendor partners are going to each agency and sort of circulating this knowledge sharing session.
No, Avishkar, if you remember, 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, there was a series of these kind of workshops that happened, which EMA organized and actually had, I mean, I remember that at that point, Himanshu was a general secretary and there was a whole bunch of people and Vipul Pandey and everybody worked very closely on doing this. The feedback we end up getting occasionally is that 50% of it becomes people pushing themselves rather than knowledge sharing. And that's a bit of a danger because when we get that feedback, as industry bodies, we need to remain neutral. So that's the only feedback that we got in one or two places. I just feel that if it is done at a larger forum with a multiple set of people doing it rather than in individual offices, maybe it would work better. And we just discussed this, saying that we should definitely do a joint skilling day between ISA and EMA. And we would want to make it, I would recommend to all our member agencies that it is a essential. It's not a like to do, it has to be a must do. The minute it becomes a must do, like how many of our production people are attending Palm? It was a must do, it was a thing people had to do at Encompass. If they didn't attend it, it would be marked, it would be brought up in the year-end review.
You know, Avishkar, actually, if all our vendor partners can come together as a collaborative and put together a basic certification, let's say it's a 2-day training, equally represented, you know, Madan's there, you know, varied people, and come and say, educate people on what the technology is. Right? You want to understand video, it could be a joint session between Suresh with maybe Spectrum, whoever, right? Who are competitors. Can you come together as a united force and educate us, saying, the entire resource pool, saying, when you look at video, look at it from this perspective. What is sound? You know, how important is the sound engineer? What role does he play? Can you come and do a workshop and do a certification? Like I said, I think we'll sign up. Saying we'll make sure every single resource, including an admin person, because you know he could be an event manager on a day when we really need that extra resource. Happy to get them all certified, so they go through these 2 days workshop with the resource pool. You know, so we know they've understood. At least you know what you hear is what you remember, right? You go through it, you understood what the need is, you understood who your partners is. Then it's not about personal plug. We're happy to commit ourselves to saying, we'll go through this exercise, you know, take the certification, make sure everybody who joins us, either from another agency who already has it, great, or we make it a mandate, saying, have you completed? So we're happy to put this into our HR practice and make it, you know, mandate ourselves to upgrade.
Right, great. I think in ISA, we also had the stock before the COVID thing happened that, you know, whatever sessions that we would do, we'd make it like a resource pool, put it onto an online platform where anybody has access to it. So that would also make things easier. Certification we'll have to look
I think even that online, if you do a certification, you participated, complete it. Like all our you know, online courses, make sure they complete it. There's a, you know, you can actually, I think he's already working on an app like that. Have that, so people don't do this for, you know, they know when you have offer a course, 9 out of 10, nobody wants to go and attend it, or they don't have the time for it. But ensuring that you go through it, it's a mandate, right? Even to make, let's say, when you do your evaluation at the end of the year, you need the certification to even go forward.
If you make it a certification, because you know what happens, free knowledge is available on YouTube. How many people go there? Right? It's a matter of certification, then people want it.
Okay, so there is a pull and a push, then we get it done. We have time for one last question if anybody wants to bring up something.
My name is Shekhar Kusuma. I'm basically a sound engineer and I work mainly with live events for broadcast and also some of which are deferred live and some of it are properly live. What happens with live events is that there's no room for error, so good amount of planning happens and good amount of information percolates right down to the wage earners. It's basically picking up the only line that I learned from economics. So, but somewhere, like when it is not a live event, okay, the information is very well circulated to the heads, but that information does not pass right down to the wage earner, okay? That wage earner like might be someone like who is appointed to just bring the tea in at one point of time. In the television industry, it becomes a number of frames. That kind of accuracy is required. So this is an area where I feel that a lot of F-ups that generally we use as a word out there happen because of that. This is an area which needs to be plugged, and I think Felix would second me on that. What happens is when there is an event which is mainly of audio-visual event, okay, the focus is mainly on the video front and the audio front communication doesn't happen properly because somewhere down the line, the people are either too much into video, okay, or too much into audio. And people who are too much into video are very proud of the fact saying that I'm zero in audio. That's where the communication of information becomes a problem. How can can a forum of this can help plug this at a student level is my question.
I just like to share a couple of experiences that I've had, again, mainly with foreign clients, okay? They take a lot of trouble before the event to sit down with the entire crew, okay? And they go through the details of the show, the issues that we need to look out for. They even talk about in case there's a fire, in case there's a problem, which is the exit route and everything. I've very rarely seen that with any of our, not to run people down, but our event guys locally don't even talk to us about the event. They've given the details, somebody knows it in the company, they've shared it, but it's all mainly technical, okay? So what you're saying is absolutely right. I think transparent sharing of information, today it need not be, even if you don't have the time to sit down and have a meeting, but you put a show flow with all the details on a WhatsApp message and share it with the group within the, with everybody concerned. I think that's important, that's a very good point. So again, it's all about communication and transparent sharing of the information. We're all here to make sure that that show goes off really well, and the only way it can go off well if you know all the parameters involved.
I'll just add to what you said, and I completely agree with what you said. It's actually great to have technical partners where one person is obsessed with sound and one is obsessed with video, and have both of them on your show. Rarely do you end up finding that match, and because I've spent so much time in television, again, the amount of time we spend in rehearsals, because when we are recording, and if you're going live, we know that we've only got one shot at this. I think the 2 years of the pandemic, because many events became virtual and digital, two things happened just by default. One was you started pre-visualizing the show, right? Because now that you could see the setup and place a person against a green screen, and we started doing so much green screen work, that there's a certain learning that came that all digital events were like broadcast events. So I think there has been a big increase in knowledge at that level. I've in fact started suggesting to people saying, treat all your events in your head as a hybrid event. If there were 3 cameras right now here which were switching live, and the broadcast output was going somewhere where it was being monitored, immediately we would start wondering about what's the amount of light on everyone's face, is the backdrop whatever, can I be directly next to this backdrop? And you'd start thinking of those things. And frankly, in this world going forward, I have stopped looking at any event as live alone. I mean, as in when I say live, I mean theatrical production rather than broadcast production. I've started telling everybody to treat it as broadcast because it really changes the sensibility. So I do believe that that would be one. It has happened to some degree, but I think we need to continue on that path. But point is absolutely well taken.
Another thing I want to just add to this, not directly related to what you spoke about, but just going down to the value chain. Like I said, your loaders and, let's say your riggers. One thing that we've learned in the last 2 years, most of our work has been broadcast. We go to a studio. When we look back, all our entire, actually a crew, whether it's sound, light, video, and a crew, are on site working through the night. Rarely do they get water. Right? Hotels actually don't give them water. You don't get tea, coffee. Right? It's completely dependent on what we do. Why is it that we as an industry, as a combined entity, actually contribute to having a caterer to actually cater to the meals for each of our team members? A production house does it easily. Everybody gets food on site. The basics are taken care of. Tea on the tap. We've never actually, so somewhere I think we've just, we've all are so self-indulgent in what we do, we don't really care for each other. It's largely on the larger thing, like you said. Why is video most important? Because that's the only thing what the client wants to see. So we are catering to a client. We don't really care about what happens at the back. So maybe culturally, we start saying, let's all come together, we'll pull. As the entire entity, we'll contribute to have a caterer. We'll make sure basics are met. Every single person gets water, gets tea, coffee, gets meal, gets breakfast in the morning because they have no time to eat. So I'm saying, can we go back to basics like this? That's change of industry. The day we start doing that and then respect, then like I said, a rigger or a loader will feel that he's a part of our industry. There's no dignity of labor. Unfortunately, that's a problem India faces. I think each of us we are equally responsible for things like that. So like I said, if we can change these things, accept, adopt and make it a part of one large family, everything can change. So I guess.
Yeah. So, but I think I'm going to put that onus on both of you. Why? Because, we're at the bottom of the pyramid. We can't really make that change. I can't go to your client and ask for this. So you have to get that done for us. I'm sorry if it's as blunt as I could put it.
No, you know what? I'll take it. Like we'll take it. Actually, it's not that I'm not saying. All I'm saying is we will push. We're going to keep pushing. And you're right. Like Madan said, we may have to let go, some of our profits to get there. But at some point we need to start. So happy to make the commitment.
Yeah, I know we are running over time, so I'm just conscious of that. But I must tell you, there are clients who we have, and we are blessed to have clients who will put everybody up at the venue of the thing. And then there are clients who will turn and say that vendor must stay this far, your core team can stay here, so-and-so can stay here. So we also go through the same challenge. It's not that we are not trying to share that we're passing a pain point on to you. I do know that the integrity of many other places may not be the same, but we try our best to provide that.
No, I understand. I'm not talking about such big things. Simple things like when you go for a setup, the 5-star hotel will keep the toilet locked, which is quite embarrassing.
They won't even put the air conditioning on during the
AC is fine, at least open the toilet.
Yeah. Something, yeah.
All right. Anything else that anybody want to add?
I just want to add one last sentence if I can, and we talked about this earlier. If someone asks you to jump 2 feet ahead, you can. Someone asks you to jump 4 feet ahead, probably with a bit of a stretch you can. But if somebody asks you to jump 8 feet standing still, you will not be able to do it. The only way you can do it is if you're willing to go 20 feet back, come running and then go ahead. So sometimes, like what Rajesh said, there is returning to the basics. Whether it's simple things like dignity of labor, or whether it is assessing whether the people who we entrust to guide technical teams are themselves competent. It is the willingness to be willing to go back, the courage to go back, knowing that you can come running and this time you'll make it 8 feet further. So that willingness, that courage is, I think, what our industry needs at this point, really to be able to organize those world-class events. Because if you're standing still, we're not going further than 3 or 4 feet, that's for sure.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. And most of what we spoke today are pain points, as ESA member, when we've made a list of terms and conditions where we addressed most of these. So we, by default, put it in a quote and give it to you. I don't know how much is seen, not seen, but we've made it a practice, and we'll want all of you who are members, non-members, please start using those terms and conditions. You're putting it down on paper. End of the day, you've accepted it. You ignored it, but you accepted it. All right, thank you so much.
We'll have to wrap this panel discussion. Thank you so much for that lovely session. I now call upon Mr. Anil Chopra, the founding director of Palm Expo, to felicitate these guests. Joining the felicitation is Ms. Smita Rai, Deputy Project Director as well. Can you please have a round of applause, guys? Can you have a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be starting our next session at 3 o'clock, which is on stage music production for live video streaming. Please join us then. Thank you.
So I would like to just thank ISA, the association based out of Bangalore for the pro audio industry, the retail companies, and we are happy that they are part of the conference program. Thank you.